Hello and welcome back to the Rope Access and Climbing Podcast. I'm your host, Mikey Stevenson, and today I'm going to be talking to you about working at heights and the difference between rope access versus fall protection. If this is your first time here, please make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. So stay tuned. Step into your harness and get ready for a podcast about the vertical world. All right, well, thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. So today we're talking about the difference between rope access and fall protection. But first of all, we need to kind of dive into some of the details prior to even getting certified. All right, so first and foremost, when do you need to be tied off? And what does tied off mean? So anytime that you are working above 10 feet, maybe 6 feet, you're going to have to kind of check out your local legislation and, the company policies. They may dictate a different number. So they're going to have some sort of a fall protection plan that will state that you need to be attached to a structure that's rated for, 3,600 pounds, 5,000 pounds. Anytime that you are exposed to a fall greater than 10 feet or 6 feet, like I said, whatever that number is. Also, anytime that you are exposed to an edge or an open hole. So here where I live, anytime that you are within 6 feet of that exposed edge or that open hole, you also have to be tied off. All right. So step one, understand your legislation and kind of understand your company's policy and their fall protection plan and figure out when you are required to be tied off. All right, so the big question here, what is the difference between rope access and fall protection? Now, there's a lot of differences realistically, but the biggest difference that we can kind of talk about here is one, training. And the training is going to be will separate the two certifications pretty substantially. We'll talk about that here soon. Another one is just the equipment. We'll talk about that a little bit here later as well. And the next big thing that will, break it down, the easiest way to understand it is that rope access requires you to have a redundant system and be attached to the anchorage by two independent points. So, from your harness to the anchorage, you need to be independently attached by two redundant points. In fall protection, you only require one independent point to the anchorage. What is the difference in training? So a standard fall protection course here where I live is a 8-hour in-class, in-person course. And then you cover the legislation on working at heights. So in that, you'll talk about what the difference is of fall arrest, work positioning, and work restraint, and kind of dive into those different methods, talk about different pieces of equipment that you can use for each one of them, and kind of show you different harnesses used in that industry. In rope access, obviously, we've spent some time talking about that here. A standard rope access course, IRATA or SPRAT, whatever it is a minimum of 4 days of training with one independent day of assessment with a third-party assessor or evaluator. So obviously, with that, you have a lot more, understanding. There's a lot more to know in the rope access industry than when it comes to, how to get from point A to point B. You're working in suspension when you're working under a fall protection certification, you're not really working under suspension too often unless, you're doing work positioning. And, there's a lot of gear that allows you to do, just that. Does your rope access certification supersede a fall protection certification? And here where I live, no, it does not. Depending on where you live, it may. I don't know the legislation where you live necessarily, but here in North America, they are two independent courses, two independent certifications. And in my province here, they are two independent legislations. So just because you have a rope access certification does not allow you to operate with fall protection equipment. An easy example of this would be, say you had to work in an aerial work platform. If you only have a rope access certification, you are not allowed to work in an aerial work platform and be tied off to the basket. And the reason is you just don't have the certification for that. You don't have a fall protection, fall arrest certification to work in that basket. You can get the aerial work platform certification, but to be on most sites, you do require to be tied off inside the basket once you come off the ground. So therefore, you wouldn't be allowed to. That's probably the easiest way to kind of give you an example of where one doesn't supersede. Now, a lot of people are like, well, my IRATA does because I cover fall protection in my IRATA course. Well, you touch on it, but it's not a fall protection course. Think of it more as an awareness aspect of things than anything else. You may spend an hour out of a 40-hour course talking about fall protection. And, like I said, with the requirements of an 8-hour course for fall protection, it doesn't even meet the minimum requirements for the legislation here. Now, like I said, where you live may dictate a different rule, and I don't know what that is. But here in North America, it is what it is, and I'm sorry, but it does not supersede the legislation of working under fall protection. Can you use rope access equipment for fall arrest? And it depends. There are items of equipment, like the ASAP that is actually designed as a mobile fall arrest device. The energy absorber, the Absorbica or the absorber, are certified to the EN 355 standard for fall arrest. So providing it's attached to the sternal or dorsal D-ring, yeah, technically it does count. But before you take this, make sure you check out your local legislation under fall protection, and verify that that equipment is deemed safe for fall arrest. Also make sure to talk to your technical authority or subject matter expert to ensure that it's okay under your company policies. Okay. Like I said, every company is going to have some sort of fall protection plan. They're going to have an idea of equipment they want you to use in the event that you are exposed to a substantial fall. And you're going to have to follow those requirements for each company. And then extending on that, one big misconception that we have, certainly here where I live, is the individuals coming from overseas that think that it's okay to use one single cow's tail attachment and call that fall arrest. Providing your feet are, securely on a structure or on a ladder or something. They call that their 2 points. But I've talked about this before on, I believe, an acceptable, unacceptable episode where, what's the big difference between fall arrest and rope access? And the two independent attachments to anchorage is the big difference there. Rope access requires you to have a redundant system. If you have only one cow's tail, then you're no better off than working under fall arrest. Now, with that being said, a cow's tail is not certified, not tested, not deemed safe to be used as fall arrest piece of equipment. Therefore, you're not allowed to use a single cow's tail as a fall arrestor. So just kind of, get rid of that misconception. If you have one cow's tail, you're on 1 point. You're obviously breaking the rules of rope access. Your feet do not count as a point of attachment. Obviously, if the one cow's tail fails, there's excluding the fact that you're standing on something, there's nothing stopping you from falling. And that's the complete point to rope access here, is making sure that you don't have that ability. You have 2 points to prevent that potential of any one item of equipment failing, that there's something there to back you up. So that's all I really have for today. So thank you very much for tuning in. All right. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know in the comments below what, the legislation is for you. Maybe you are allowed to use one cow's tail where you live, and that's interesting. I don't know what, like I said, what the legislation is where everybody lives. I have people from all over the world tuning into this podcast, and that's absolutely amazing. And I'm, equally learning from you. Obviously, I kind of specialize in the industry where I live. And, I look forward to, talking to people from abroad where things are different, and I understand that. So, like I said, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe, it's right down here, and hit the bell for notifications if you're watching this on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Give me a review, as it definitely helps out the podcast and gets it out there to more people. Until next time.